How you going? Short Nose Fishing here. It's bass season. It's been bass season for a week and a bit. No, 1 week. I went out last weekend. It was a schmozzle. It was rough. Motor problems. I fished further down the system. Spawning fish. Figured the aggregations would be there, but too salty. Well, at least the ludric that I caught on a chatterbait with a clone prawn trailer, that's what told me it was too salty. I've actually got a refractometer, which measures salinity. So, and I said to myself, it's a bit over the top, don't bring it. Should have brought it. Because I'll tell you, within 500 metre stretch of water, I saw a noticeable difference in hits that I was getting from bass, and caught one to sort of put in the bait. It was noticeable from how far upstream I was fishing. The further I drifted downstream, less I got bit. I came across a good school too. Really good school. They were so shut down. I threw a bunch of stuff. All the stuff I'll show you, I threw it at them, and I didn't get nothing. That's fishing. You just gotta not be so invested in fish that are not that interested. So that's like half the game, and the other half is to throw stuff at them that they want to eat, and sometimes that takes a little bit of time. But anyway, let's run into, what do we want to talk about? Let's just quickly touch on one thing that was super upsetting when I was fishing. So I'm fishing a bank with the wind in my back, and I'm casting over to the shore. Man, I've got an electric motor and everything, so I was able to keep myself away from the shore. But to do that, I've got to have the nose facing into the wind, because it was a pretty fair breeze, and it was just pushing the boat in the bank, and oh mate, that's the most annoying thing. So since having the electric, I've started to, I don't know whether the word's disrespect, but I've started to be less considerate of conditions, and by that I mean winds. Like when I didn't have an electric, it was like I fished where the wind would allow me to have a solid drift, a good drift. I could fish water effectively, and haven't been doing that. So it's one of those things where technology gives you an opportunity to get one up over Mother Nature, and then you start to fish in a way that maybe is less productive, because maybe you're not as respectful. So I've got to reflect on that. Lessons learned. Look at your maps. There's an online thing called windy.com, and thanks Gary for that one. And it's just like a Google map with wind direction. I think it's got like a week forecast, so you can go over an area and just like click on 6 a.m. at Sunday, and it'll tell you what the wind looks like, and that's so helpful. Instead of sort of having to guess, you got Google Maps, you got Willy Weather, and you're sort of like, oh yeah, it's going to be southeast and southeast. Like Windy will just show you. It'll show you basically where you, like how your boat's going to get pushed around along a bank, and that's like it for me. So yeah, that's the big tip that I'm going to fish with in my mind for next weekend is fish banks that are wind friendly. If you got spot lock, fantastic. Go and hit those banks that are good looking banks, where the wind's blowing in your back and your spot lock's just holding you there without standing on a foot pedal or using a little remote control while you're trying to fish. Yeah, go for it. But for the rest of us, yeah, pick a bank that's going to push you. Pick a bank where the wind is going to push you along, or at least a bank that's got wind in your face. You've got that electric, and you can just pulse it to keep you just, far enough away from the bank to get a cast right tied up to it. Yeah, that's the go. But anyway, let's move on. I'm going to talk about some of the gear that I used last time and what was successful. Look, nothing was really successful because it was a bit of a rough trip. I went down river a bit to the bridge, I caught a ludrig, thought, nah, way too salty. I fished near the boat ramp, big aggregation of bass. They weren't biting. I threw a bunch of stuff at them, I'll run through that. I went upstream, I had a bit of motor troubles, that's the only thing. So I didn't want to go too far upstream because, I didn't want to blow the motor up. But it turned out it was just a warped fuel pump rubber gasket. So that's not replaced. I've got the fuel pump. So, put the rubber hoses on it, throw the connections over, and I'll be good to go. So here's one thing that I'm just going to straight up say, probably avoid. I'm going to avoid. You can do what you like, but if you hook into a 40, 45 in the river, and it's a good fish, and we love those good fish. Like, we just love those 40s, those 40 bass. Oh man, they just make you feel good. I love it. But this is a light setup. This is a 2000 size reel. A great reel for bass, even like for the rivers. This rod here, that's a Daiwa, that's a hyper. It's a 1.5 to 3 kilo line rating rod. So, like fast action and everything. So if you want to work your lightly weighted soft plastics, rip up. And mate, you can really fling small plastic profiles on this. It'll whip them out there. It's great. And that's why I've got that. You'll see a little goggle eye action there. That's a Shawano Classic. I've got the legit goggle eye, tackle shop goggle eye, which is like, as good as the Spotlight goggle eye, which will cost you, 10 times less. The old Spotlight goggle eye. Z-Man Slim Swim. I cut about a quarter off him to fit on that. So that's a good little bait actually. But I hooked into a fish and like when he was going and that rod was bending down right over into that power phase, and man oh man, you get worried when the bend in your rod starts to bend around that first eyelet. Whew, you don't want to be about it. If you've got a good fish on and there's some snaggy country, say goodbye, say good night. Like, it's not going to happen. Or, if you're a mad, hectic, legendary, bass fisher, yeah, sure, maybe. But for regular blokes who like to go for a fish, who are like okay at it, like me, man, just too much risk. I want to throw baits on the gear that I am confident I can pull a fish out with. I want that fish in the boat. I do not cope well with lost fish. If I lost a big fish because the gear just didn't give me a good enough chance, like if the probability was really low because the gear was real light, man, that's a recipe for a bad day. So, with that in mind, those 1.5 to 3 kilo line rated rods will not be coming in the boat anymore. But this is what I love. This is the good stuff. Plenty of backbone, just everything you need. So TD Black, you don't have to have the TD Blacks. You can go the hypers. Just go a thicker, a thicker rod, like a heavier line class rod. Yeah, that's the Black MQ. Spoiled myself a little bit on that one. But man, so good. 2 to 6 kilo line rating. So yeah, I think this has got 12 pound braid on that too. So 12 pound braid, and I run sort of 10 to 12 pound leader. And that's because if I've got this little square bill tied on, that little dog there, that's a Bassman actually. Super reasonable prices, the Bassman on the square bill. Holy moly, you won't find it cheaper. You won't. And the action is red hot. So good. I actually haven't thrown it enough. I think I bought it when the season was coming to a close anyway, but red hot. Big fan. So yeah, great action. But I can throw this thing, because I've got 12 pound. If there's a piece of timber there, man, I'm throwing that Bassman in there. I'm throwing it and I'm just like, wind it down till you feel that first bump. Because that little bib, that bib's going to want to knock down on timber. And the treble hooks, like the squiggles, are designed so you can bump around stuff without getting snagged. Real hectic. So, yeah. With 12 pound, I'm confident. I can, if I hook a fish in that real rugged stuff, I can winch him out. I can get him out. Even those, and that's the thing, like, if you're a big dog bass in the Macleay, in the Clarence, wherever, and you're the big dog, you have called that big log home, and that's your home, you know, you're in that timber. So if your lure's not in that timber, where else are you going to be? Not near where the big dog bass are. So that's my that's why I love the jig so much. You can punch it into that hectic country and pull big fish out. And that's, you know, we love those big bass. So good. So yeah, running that thicker gear gives me more confidence so I can pull fish out from hectic cover, but also, you know, sometimes a fish is going to want to turn a particular way that, for whatever reason, maybe you've drifted into a tree and it wants to go toward the tree all of a sudden, and you've got that 12 pound on, you can steer him. Being able to steer fish is a big positive for me. And especially like, if you're bringing the fish to the boat, say you've drifted out into the middle, and you've got like no obstructions, but the fish is turned, like the fish is coming up, and he's turned, I can't even imagine the scenario, because sometimes it's just like, it's sort of instinct. The fish is turning a way that you do not want it to turn, because the direction that it's about to travel in is going to provide it with slack. And you don't want that, because when that fish feels that slack, you just shake. That homeboy's just going to shake. And so like, if you need to crank him and keep him in a certain direction to put him in that net, yeah, you're not doing that with a light line weighted rod, because you're already in that power phase. There's not much more power you're going to give it. And yeah, with those lighter rods, lighter lines, you know, one little tiny nick that you may not even notice, or you may have gotten the nick on the first part of that fight, and as soon as you try to give him a little bit more to put him in the net, and it's like, bam, he's gone. So yeah, want to avoid all that. So that's why I love those 2 to 6 kilo line rated rods, 12 pound braid, 10 to 12 pound later. You can pull them out of some pretty good countries. So yeah, we'll jump over into another one that I really like, and I'm sort of in the midst of testing it. And oh man, that's scuff. So that's some scuff. You won't be able to see it, eh? But oh man, I cannot. Well, okay, let's give that a crack. You can see a little bit, you can see that scuff there. So it doesn't look like much here, but yeah, that's real scuff. That's what I mean. This is 12 pound. I've obviously run this through some stuff. Dropped a fish, no doubt. Didn't break him off. So that's that beauty of 12 pound. So this is the Tanaga. I'm a massive fan. So the Tanaga here, it's got like a weedless hook system. It's not really weedless though. Let's be fair. That's been those little weedless hooks have got hung up a few times. I was out there in the grass, that tussocky grass that I was throwing at. I'm still pretty confident with these. I don't know whether I'll throw it in hectic country. Like I might walk them down a rock wall, like a real rocky bank. I'll walk them down that. And this hinge system, so I've started to make my own little baits, and I'm really starting to froth on different hinge systems. But that hinge, like I've been shaking it so that I'm doing a lot of that. And then slow pauses, and I'm hoping that sort of when you're up in the water column, you've shook it, it's sort of come down and those claws are sort of slowly floating down. But look, jury's out because I had a fish on there and I dropped him. It breaks my heart every time, but I dropped him sort of midway through the retrieve. I don't know whether it's the hook. Like when I do pull a fish in the boat, it'll be really interesting to see how that fish is hooked. But the bite came throwing at a rock wall, and it was pretty much, that fish was either sitting between two rocks, very, very shallow, or he was sitting in a metre of water and looking up, waiting for stuff to come down, because first got the splash and, bail arm over, hand on the reel, and it was pretty much loaded up and set and winding in, but it's probably my inability to recognise that I need to let that fish run a bit on a weedless presentation, so that he can close his mouth, and then I can really load up and make sure that when I'm setting that hook, the rod's far flatter against sort of the water, so that when I'm loading up, I'm very quickly into power mode. I'm not using a lot of the tip to set the hook. I'm setting that hook with the meat of the rod. If you're setting it up here, there's no meat. You got no meat. You're setting it down, setting it like this, you've got a lot of that meat's ready to go to sort of punch that hook in. But it's fine gauge hook, so who knows? We'll see. I am a fan. I'm definitely going to run it next time. Next time I go this weekend. So yeah, for sure. These are for the fishers that have like more confidence that you can poke a stick at. That's the Boney. That's the MMD Boney, the Boney swim. And man, it looks good. It's got a good click. Those joints really click together when they're in the water. It's 20 gram, so I wouldn't throw it on a 2 to 6 kilo, because those 2 to 6s can throw 14 grams max. You could throw more. No worries. But I don't want to have to worry about snapping rod tips, because, I'm into the fishing, I'm throwing, I'm casting, I'm punching at banks, and sort of you forget that you're throwing a heavier lure on a lighter rod, and you're a little bit, you're not as careful as you should be. So that's why I used this here. This is a pretty basic bait cast combo, like, again, Daiwa, what's this one? An Ed, 100 HDA Ed. It does the job, it's a good little reel. I mean, I don't love it because it's not high speed, and I didn't realise there was really such a thing as high speed when I bought this. So if I have my time again, definitely buy high speed. And then it's coupled up with an Ed stick as well, so it's like a shorter, more powerful stick. So that's a 1.83 metre. Cast weight 7 to 21 gram, and that's about like 22, I think. That little Boney swim there. Great action. Big fan of that action. Sinks well. Like, that's what I was really worried, because so many jointed baits sink real slow. This doesn't sink slow. It's got I would say a medium sink rate on it, whatever that means. A metre every 2 to 3 seconds, maybe? Something like that. It's not a slow sink. So what I'm saying is, if you're fishing an edge that's like 2 metres, like a 2 metre edge, and it's runs down into 5 or 6 metres, don't worry about it. Like, I reckon if you know, even if bass have their asses on the bottom, as long as you could run it a metre and a half over their head, even in pretty murky stuff, not chocolate, but even pretty tannin water, like they'll still see it, hear it, and smell it if you're using scent, which you definitely should. But yeah, this bait is for if you've got confidence. If you are just like full on confident, because it's 115 mil, I believe. So it's a bigger bait. I mean, I'm really loving this concept of throwing bigger stuff to get bigger fish. So I know people say elephants eat peanuts, but proof's in the pudding. Like those bigger flatties are more consistently caught on bigger lures. They will eat small lures. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I'm just really looking to experiment with different kinds of sizes, shapes, techniques, all that kind of stuff. And just a quick thing, you know, the massive benefit of fishing with someone else in the boat is fish what they are not fishing. Fish, you know what? I'd be happy fishing with a bloke who's fishing just, you know, standard spinnerbaits and soft plastics and catching a few fish, and then me fishing something totally different. Because it means that I know that fish are biting, fish are active if they're hitting the standard stuff, right? If I'm fishing something different, I can then, and I'm getting no bites, I can say to myself, maybe this doesn't work. I also have the confidence that I can throw different stuff and just be able to confirm or deny whether this was a good idea or not. Like most of the stuff I throw is just like terrible idea. That doesn't work. But then sometimes you run into stuff that's just like, wow, that actually works. And it's super cool when that happens. But it doesn't happen a lot. Yeah, right. So what have we run through? Everything but my favourite, and this is what I call my fish on because it's sick and I love jig fishing. The clunk, the bite, the swim, the wind down to the slack, the clunk, man, it's good. I just love it. I'm a big fan. So this is the Bassman, surprise, surprise. Just good stuff. Yeah. Although this hook bent out a little bit. It did bend out a little bit. Look, I got 15 pound on leader, and I did get snagged up pretty well. So maybe that's a little bit of user error, but yeah, just one to watch out for. Even though you got a weed guard, I had bent this out a little bit, but that's a little yabby imitation. I'm always overthinking it. Like it's awesome because it's such a good little presentation in terms of looking like yabby. But you know, Macleay River, do they have yabbies? Can be pretty salty. So sort of think to myself, you know, should be using something else. I'm moving away from the Gulp 3-inch grub, which is like, it's like a religious, that following, those 3-inch Gulp grubs. Like, yeah, I'm sure there's towns in Australia you get run out of if you know, were blasphemous towards the 3-inch Gulp grub. It's good, don't get me wrong. But for me, if you're fishing a slow jig, and these little frondy boys, they're dancing around like no one's business. The curly tail is good for a straight retrieve. It needs that water to be pulling across it to get some action into it, not hopping. Like, what's a grub tail going to do if you're hopping? It's sort of, anyway, not a fan. Swim jig maybe. I don't think anyone throws a swim jig in Australia. I'm sure there's someone, but it's not common. But yeah, so that was all the stuff I was throwing last weekend, and super keen to get back on the water this Sunday. I'll have the boats, the engine sorted and ready to go. I'll be changing this leader out for sure. And yeah, super looking. Oh man, I just love the jig. Get onto the jig. Just do it. The amount of times you pull up to a bank and you see this hectic timber, and everyone knows there's a fish in there. They're not always going to bite. Don't get me wrong. Not always going to bite. But man, you want to be in there, and that jig is going to do the job for you. The jig is going to do the job for you. Yeah, it is tough to fish if it's windy. Fishing a jig when it's windy is hard because you have to have. It's kind of like bait fishing almost, but you're sort of moving the bait constantly, so it's like that's the trouble. I'm trying to drag the jig a lot more instead of lifting. A lot of guys are, but like jig fishers are, they're sort of got like lifting like that, so the bait's almost hopping up, falling down, hopping up, falling down. I want to try and drag. I kind of think that this skirt here, I think it sort of, this is crazy Sean's thoughts, but I kind of think that the skirt is actually imitating leaf litter and mud disturbance, like silt disturbance from the bottom of the water. And then what will happen as that rubber trailer falls away, exposes this little yabby boy who's just been happily digging around in the mud. I think this is sort of, that's like your silt, and this is your bait, mucking around in the silt. And I think that's what turns the bass on, but oh look, I could be completely wrong. That's the best thing about fishing, is you just get to think about stuff and try stuff. It's man, it's such a good pastime. Anyway, this has been another long video because I like to froth pretty hard on the weekend fishing trip. But takeaways are definitely, don't fish too light for bass. Don't fish too light for bass. Fish with the wind in mind. And number 3 is fish with a jig. Number 4 is fish with a jig. Number 5 is fish with a jig. Number 6, you know what it's going to be. Have a good time. Anyway, if you've got something that you do that you reckon no one else is doing, man, hit me up. Send me a message or something, or put it in the comments. Maybe you don't want to tell everyone because you're still figuring out, and if it's a bomb technique, you know, you've done the hard yards to figure it out, then get going with it. But yeah, even if that's the case, mate, you know, do something different. And keep it to yourself if you want to keep it to yourself. I mean, that's the thing. If you find a spot, a technique, you don't have to share it. I like to share it because I just like talking about fishing. So, yeah, I love to try new things, and I totally respect people who they want to keep a few aces in the back pocket, and that's all good. But you know, I don't fish tournaments, so I don't really care. I don't need. I don't ever want to pay someone else to take myself fishing. Seems a bit ridiculous, but it's all good. Everyone's got their thing. Some people froth on it, and that's cool too. But yeah, I just get so excited. So I'm so glad that someone's watching these, even though that, you know, audience could be a little small, but it's all good. Yeah, that's my dodgy shed video about bass fishing and what I'll do this weekend, what worked last weekend. But yeah, I think at the moment too, worth noting that there's not been a lot of rain. Rivers are not flowing very hard, so the salt is moving further up the system than what we would otherwise anticipate. I have a feeling that bass spawn based on salinity, and that salinity that they're looking for is further upstream at times like this, when there's little freshwater flow pushing salt down, than standard seasons with rain where the fresh pushes further down the system. So fish a bit further up than usual. But yeah, that's another little tip. Maybe you could come away with a few fish on the brag mat. Until then, thanks for watching the videos. There've been some super supportive people for the videos too. So yeah, thanks so much for that. That means a lot. It's good to know that people find this stuff valuable and people teaching me stuff. So a couple of blokes have reached out to tell me what they do. Hidden weight systems for the clone prawn. big fan. I'm thinking about chopping that clone prawn a third the way, using that big clone prawn, chopping the tail off, running it backwards with the hidden weight system. So there's just so much to froth on, so much different stuff that you could be doing. It's all just good fun. Anyway, I'm going to shut my trap and yeah, get back to a bit more rigging. There's a few frayed leaders I need to change. So anyway, thanks for watching this long ass video. I've been Sean O's fishing, and yeah, in the meantime, keep fishing. Cheers.